All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, we're a little bit late today. We're making work. I was talking to our pastor today that this is Senate time. We're working on Senate time today, and she said actually it's Cameroon time. She has some Cameroon past members of her church, and so we're at Senate time or Cameroon time, however it may be. We are very pleased to have Reverend Dr. Carrie Finch Burris of Kenwood Presbyterian Church in Nottingham, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from District 8. Please rise for the invocation.
I'd like to say thank you to Senator Klausmeier for the invitation, to President Ferguson for allowing me this privilege, and to all of you. And it's personal, extra privilege to share this time with the women of Alpha Kappa Alpha. I have a number of people I look up to who are all sisters of your sorority, so it's exciting. A full room. Anyways, let us pray. Oh, holy God, we give you thanks. We thank you for bringing together this group of people, our elected officials, who have committed their time and energy to the betterment of your people. We thank you for the beauty of this land we call home. We thank you for the creativity, love, and hope you give your people, Lord. And we now humbly ask that you bless these civil servants as they enter into this morning's session. Bless them with wisdom and courage to serve you and all the people of Maryland. Bless their decisions and discussions. Bless their time and willingness to serve. May the people of this great state, all of the people, be in the forefront of their decisions. May their actions help Maryland become a safer, cleaner, and prosperous place for all who call it home. May we, in all that we do, work towards a more peaceful world, a world filled with hope and opportunity for all. And in all that we do, may we seek to be a light in the darkness. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from District 8.
Thank you, Mr. President. She's running away. I just wanted to let you know that your prayer will be journalized, and thank you very much for coming down. Are you going to go see your sorority sisters? Oh, I thought they were your sorority sisters. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, our minister at the Kenwood Presbyterian Church has been amazing, and if anybody wants any Southern cooking, that's her.
Very good.
And just she's a wonderful asset to our community. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you. And without objection, we'll certainly journalize the wonderful invocation this morning. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right. Has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? It appears so. The clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, just a quick note. This week was going to be our 47-day, but unfortunately we are missing our wonderful Chair of Budget and Tax, who has been in communication, and just want to give an update. He is doing very well. He is, but he passed along a message that he asked to send along to folks. Unfortunately, he had a bacterial infection from a sinus infection that got into his bloodstream. And so he is currently in the hospital, but responding extremely well to treatments. But it's going to take several weeks of IV antibiotics to knock out. The hope is that after he's fever-free for 24 hours and the pain is manageable, he can be released, and then we'll be resting and doing IVs from home. We are hopeful that he will be back as soon as possible. But an important note, very, very, very important note, the line this is our chair in a nutshell. I'm getting great care and was on a budget negotiation call last night and looking forward to being back in person as soon as possible. So he was on the phone. Yes, he's going to be all right. But he's going to be out for a little bit. And so as he recovers, let's make sure to keep him in our thoughts and prayers. He's going to be totally fine. It is totally treatable. But, infections are infections, and they just, they creep up, and it is what it is. So he is doing what matters most and taking care of himself, and he will be back as soon as he is healthy and able. But was talking to him on the walkover from caucus to here. So he's making do. All right. So there's that. Let's go ahead and do our first resolution. If we could have Mr. McCrae join us here. And we have a resolution today for a soon-to-be retired member of our OIS division, Colin McCrae, who has worked for Information Services for the last 26 years. And those of you who may not recognize Colin without his headlamp on, he is here every day checking the phones, the lines, and especially, a kid through COVID, it was like crawling on the ground to figure out if the right thing was plugged in the right spot with the headlamp. He's one of the tireless heroes who makes this place work that we are so grateful for. And so after 26 years, we wanted to make sure to honor his incredible service to the General Assembly and to the Senate of Maryland. We have a resolution. If the clerk could read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Colin McCrae in recognition of your retirement after 25 years of exemplary service with the Office of Operations and Support Service. We commend your dedication to the Maryland General Assembly as support engineer for information systems. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 20th day of February, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? It appears so. The clerk will take the call. Colin, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your 25 years of service with OIS and thanks you and wishes you the absolute best on your retirement. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. We have another series of guests. We have another resolution today. Who is our AK? Yes, Senator from the 23rd District, of course, with that wonderful-looking bow tie.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I am pleased to introduce the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm proud of my wife, Ingrid Watson, who is here today leading this event as the North Atlantic Region State Coordinator of the Connection and Social Action Committee. I'm proud to introduce the 27th North Atlantic Regional Director, Ms. Irma Barron, accompanied by Ms. Erica Stanton, Erica Farid, and Ms. Tamara Davis Brown. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is an international service organization founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. in 1908. It is the oldest Greek letter organization established by African-American college-educated women. Symbolized by 20 pearls, their membership boasts Vice President Kamala Harris, Rosa Parks, Ella Fitzgerald, Misty Copeland, and while there are 10 members in the House, we have one member here in the Senate, and that is our very own Ms. Sally Robb. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority's mission is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, to promote unity and friendship among college women, to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social stature, to maintain a progressive interest in college life, and to be of service to all mankind. Their distinctive colors are salmon pink and apple green, as indicative by the bow tie my wife made me wear today. Mr. President, can you please read the resolution?
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated in recognition of years of cultivating and encouraging high scholastic and ethical standards and service to all mankind. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 28th day of February 2023.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? So the clerk will take the call. The ladies of AKA, the Senate of Maryland, unanimously celebrates your incredible leadership and thanks you for visiting us here in Annapolis today. Please, please, please keep up the incredible work. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I am certain the prior Chairwoman Kelly is watching and is very pleased today of her AKA sisters. She's incredible. Great to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's. Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want the AKAs to know that on yesterday morning, the Greater 202 Coalition had its meeting. And in the meeting is a little lady who is a faithful member of AKA. She is a faithful. As a matter of fact, every 2 weeks, she gets her fingernails polished in green. But the thing you need to know, and I'm asking you all to celebrate her, she is 104 years old. She's wonderful.
Remarkable. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Wonderful. Wonderful.
I see my great friend, Dr. Annette Blake, who works very closely with me and the coalition. And there are so many wonderful friends up there. I want to thank you all for the work that you do in our community for those who are homeless, hopeless, and helpless. I thank you all. You're wonderful.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess the only way I can really follow that is by introducing my favorite member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, my beautiful wife, Rohi Washington, who's here right now with us.
Oh, I didn't even see you there. Great to see you. Thanks for letting us borrow him in the Senate. Senator, just one moment.
Just one more thing.
Hold on one second, Senator. One second. We have the senator from Baltimore City. Do we have something to speak? No? All right. Yes, Senator from Prince George's.
Isn't that nice? We also have the president of the Prince George's County Retired Educators Association with us, and I want her to know how much we love her. Some of my most favorite people are retirees from the Prince George's County Public Schools. Once I get much older, I will join.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Senator. I don't know if anyone knows Senator was an educator. I'm not sure if anyone. Yes. Thank you, Senator. All right. Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City, 45th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got the proud, distinct honor of introducing a woman from Baltimore City who I believe everybody in Baltimore City should know, Miss Rita Cruz. Miss Rita Cruz is a public servant through and through and through. 30 years of public service as an educator in our Baltimore City public schools, shaping the young scholars' minds. But also after she stepped down and she retired from Baltimore City public schools, she's currently the president of Bel Air Edison Community Association. But more importantly, Mr. President, I look at Miss Rita as a second mother. We have a unique distinction. I think about it, me and her son actually share a birthday together. So we have the birthday at the same day. Colleagues, if you could just give it up for someone that I look at as a mentor, a guide, Miss Rita Cruz, also a AKA, I should say.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Cruz. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Maryland chapter of the American Institute of Architects has 1,800 members. We have 10 or 12 of them with us this morning, led by their leader, Executive Director Sandy Worthman. Could you all please recognize them?
Welcome to the architects. Welcome, architects. Thank you for being here.
And,
Sir, may proceed.
And then secondly, we have a lot of exchange students, I believe, upstairs in the galleries today. I had the privilege of meeting with quite a few of them this morning. They're from all over the world, including one young lady from Ukraine. So I hope you all will give them the recognition they deserve.
Welcome to the exchange students. The little American democracy in action today. Any other introductions? Before I forget, from our Secretary of the Senate's office, the Society of Senates Past is Thursday, March 9th at 6 o'clock. Members, there is a cost for participation. Please RSVP by Thursday. And it's always a wonderful event to have senators who have retired, or have left in other ways, but who come back. It's always a really nice gathering. So if you can make it, please try to attend March 9th, but RSVPs need to be known by Thursday, so in 2 days. All right, any further announcements before we jump into the work today? If not, so we consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have an announcement from the president. The clerk will read the announcement.
The President makes the following announcement to the legislative standing committees pursuant to Senate Rule 18A1, Senator Ariana B. Kelly to judicial proceedings.
We have another announcement. Announcement having been read is adopted. We have another announcement. Clerk will read the announcement.
The President makes the following announcement to the continuing committees pursuant to Senate Rule 18A2, Senator Johnny Ray Salling to the Legislative Policy Committee. Substitute Senator Mike McKay for Senator Brian W. Simonaire on the Joint Committee on Children, Youth, and Families. Senator Ron Watson to the Joint Committee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotechnology.
Message having been read is adopted. We have a third announcement. Clerk will read the announcement.
The President makes the following leadership announcement. Senator Antonia L. Hayes, Majority Whip. Senator Charles E. Sidnor III, Deputy Majority Whip.
Message having been read is adopted. All right. We're almost at full staffing. We're almost fully there. We're in a good place. Almost will have everyone. All right. We've got let's see, a message from the executive. Message from the executive. Clerk will read the message.
Dear Mr. President, this is to inform you of my intent to withdraw the appointment of Juan Alvarado, who was previously submitted to the Senate for advice and consent. I will submit a new nomination for your consideration in the coming weeks. The withdrawal referenced is attached to this letter. Sincerely, Wes Moore, Governor.
All right. Message having been read is ordered journalized. Journalized. Message from the executive. And the message will be sent to the Executive Nominations Committee. We have layover bills. This is calendar number 3. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 224, Senator Augustine, Department of the Environment, Zero Emissions, Medium and Heavy Duty Vehicles Regulations, Clean Trucks Act of 2023. Question is on the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, the question before the body is the 3 committee amendments. The 3 committee amendments. Any discussion of the amendments? Yes, Chair recognizes the minority leader on the amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, if the floor leader could yield for questions.
Will the floor leader yield? Pure Senator may proceed.
And again, I think I should acknowledge that the bulk of the bill as presented now is the amendments, right? I mean, your bill that was introduced was fairly innocuous. It dealt with the weights of the vehicles, and then it said that we may join the correct?
No, forgive me, Senator, no. The heart of the bill is that we will mandate that the state adopt the rule by the end of this calendar year. That remains the most critical part of the bill. The guardrails that we put around that are what you're referring to with regard to the amendments, to make sure that we felt like we wanted to make sure we had some guardrails when we were doing that. But the most critical part of the bill is absolutely intact, which is the adoption of the rule.
Under the original bill, it said that we may adopt the rule, and now it says that we shall adopt the rule, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's what I meant. So that, I think, was a major change in the piece of legislation since it was originally introduced.
That is correct. That was, but if I'm just being fully transparent with you, Senator, that was actually a drafting error. So it really was, the intent really was that it was going to be a mandate.
Okay. So maybe if you could explain why are we deciding to use our medium and heavy duty vehicles to follow California emission standards rather than federal standards?
We are it's consistent with what we have already started, where we have adopted the rule with regard to the automobiles, as you are aware, and so it's just being consistent that we will consistently adopt the California rule.
Okay. The second part you mentioned was the guardrails and the funding of the incremental cost, right?
Yes.
So we've talked about what that could possibly be. There isn't a fiscal note for a revised fiscal note for this bill, then, is there?
No.
No, there isn't, right?
Correct.
I mean, all right. So the concern then is the funding of this incremental cost, and what that would do. What we talked about before, that's being funded from the C fund, right?
Yes.
And that's being funded through the compliance payments, right, which are at an all-time high right now because solar developers are not meeting their renewable goals right now. So they're having to pay the compliance fee or a fine almost into the fee right now, into the fund right now. So we have no idea how much this could draw out of the C fund if it's fully implemented.
We do not know that, but the governor has already established a certain threshold for the amount that from their budget that they would put into this difference in cost.
So wait a minute, is that something different from the budget, or because there's not a cap on how much comes out of the C fund in order to implement this program, right?
No, there is not, but it is also know that CEF is not the only place where we're going to look for these funds. There are also federal funds that we are looking to get in order to support this initiative as well.
Okay. In the testimony for the House bill, the Motor Truck Administration came up and said that the incremental cost difference of these types of vehicles could be 2 to 4 times the difference, or 2 to 4 times what the diesel vehicles cost right now. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, it does.
That's an awful lot.
Yes, it is.
So yesterday, a lot of people might have seen there was an electric fire truck outside. Had some colleagues ask a couple questions about that. Fully equipped, standard fire truck, about $1 million. That vehicle, $1.8 million. So that's almost only twice. So under this bill, the buyer of a heavy-duty vehicle would go to the dealer and say, I want to buy this $1.8 million fire truck rather than $1 million fire truck, and there will be a grant that give that individual $800,000?
Yeah, that is being developed, but yes, that is the intent, that there will be a grant to fund the difference between the two.
So that's one vehicle, if we do, right? One vehicle could be $800,000. If the way that they said it, if they...
Senator, I apologize. It said up to 100, so it also could potentially not be 100%. There's the case where we would be able to potentially help, but there will be, that will be managed for sure.
Right, but we changed that dramatically. It was 20%. And then you change it to 100%. So we are now in the position to have to pay an awful lot more.
It does. It authorizes up to 100%. It does not say that it must be 100% per vehicle. But it does authorize it. We're trying to be thoughtful to be able to provide some help for folks if we're able to do so.
So as far as providing help, this bill only says, only makes this requirement for vehicles purchased in Maryland, correct?
This bill with regard to the grant,
correct,
but it's really about the manufacturers who have a percentage of their trucks that they manufacture that are then sold into the state. That is what's the percentage of the mandate.
I'm not sure I understand that. So the incremental cost difference would be made up by a company purchasing that vehicle in the state of Maryland, correct?
Yes, on that part of the bill, that is correct. The grant would be for the purchaser of that vehicle.
And does that purchaser have to register the vehicle in Maryland? Could that purchaser buy 6 vehicles in Maryland, get the incremental cost difference, and bring them out to Ohio?
Senator, I do not have an answer for that. What I do know, though, is that it is set up such that we would be able to put into regulation how the fund is going to be managed, including the grant.
Okay. So let me ask another question. This doesn't prohibit diesel-fueled vehicles from coming into the state of Maryland, right?
That is correct. What it does say is that on a sliding scale, starting in model year 2027, that there will be a percentage of the trucks that are to be electric vehicles. At no point does it reach 100%. There will be, along that sliding scale, There will always be potentially be applications for diesel trucks. There may not be, but if they are, there's room within the rule such that it will be able to continue to be there if the market asks for it.
Okay, so if we're looking at this legislation to help with greenhouse gas emissions, right? There's nothing saying that Maryland ratepayers or taxpayers could be spending an awful lot of money in providing grants for vehicles that may or may not stay in the state of Maryland, right? It's also, there's nothing in this bill that says, okay, we're going to reduce the amount of diesel vehicles that come into the state of Maryland, because this doesn't address that as well too. This just deals with somebody purchasing a vehicle in the state of Maryland, providing we have that dealer in Maryland, and providing an incremental cost difference.
The heart of the bill is about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we should really stay focused on that. I would suggest that, and what we are trying to do, as we have, as you all know, we adopted with Climate Solutions Now some pretty aggressive goals for reduction of greenhouse gas. This is one of those tools to do so. Now, a lot of what you're saying, Senator, that this is America, right? You know, people are able to go from one place to the next, but we are setting that this is a priority for us in order to address greenhouse gas, and that's what this policy does.
Okay, what I would argue that it may not address greenhouse gas, because the vehicles that are purchased in Maryland don't have to stay in Maryland. They could be brought out of state, registered somewhere else, or diesel engine vehicles can still come through Maryland at the same rate that they always were, maybe a few less, maybe not, but there's nothing really in here saying that that's going to dramatically change.
Senator, the greenhouse gases don't know the borders either.
That's right.
And so as we make policy decisions that do have an impact on greenhouse gas for the world, which is what this does, I think that that's where we are. Again, we're demonstrating, leading by example, showing that we want to reduce greenhouse gas. It's a commitment that we've made, and that's why this is a tool that I'm not disagreeing with you that it could go across the border, but the bottom line is that truck, that vehicle, that EV vehicle is not going to put dangerous emissions into the air that makes it hard for us to breathe, and it's also not going to put greenhouse gas into, which is exacerbating climate change. That's what's going to happen with this policy.
Okay, but it comes at a cost.
Yes.
And so, again, in the House testimony, the Motor Truck Association mentioned that they spoke to Governor Moore, and they said, if we follow California standards, that we are tied into California standards wherever they are, right? So we're talking about model year 27 with this bill. If California is at 5% or 15% at that time, we automatically become at 15% as well too.
There is a schedule, and we are tied to the schedule.
Tied
That
to
is
their
correct.
schedule. No matter when we get involved and how long that they've been doing it, we're tied into their schedule.
It's a 2-year lag from when we adopt the rule, which is, again, the reason why we're seeking to adopt the rule in this year, which then it will apply to the 2 years later.
So the testimony from them said that if we adopt this rule in the model year 2027, we would have to have 2,500 EV trucks would have to be the is where Maryland would have to be in order to do that. They mentioned, and they mentioned that they did talk to the governor on that. That could come at a price tag of $600 million. Have you heard that number before?
That is not a number I'm familiar with.
It's not, okay. So that was their testimony in saying if they had to do this on their own before the incentive piece came in that, in a sense, got them on board. I mean, you got them on board because you said, hey, if there's any incremental difference, state of Maryland will pay for it.
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that you mentioned the fact that the Maryland Motor Truck are on board with this piece of legislation, which they are, as are other stakeholders.
Well, again, $600 million, I think that they probably thought that was a pretty good deal. If that's what their numbers are, and we're going to have to meet that, and that's what they're saying, is the incremental cost difference, and we amend the bill to say, hey, we'll pick up 100% of it, then sure, it's not a bad deal for them. They're going to get those dollars from Maryland taxpayers.
This is an evolving marketplace, is what I would suggest to you, Senator. The cost of electric vehicles, as has been the case in the automobile market. We've seen where we still have high numbers. When it was new, early adoption, but as there was a larger adoption of it, those prices came down. That's a part of what this seeks to do, such that we won't have such a high price tag at that point as we're building a larger market that is, and bringing in new players, which is what this is, to support manufacturers, including right here in our very own state, to bring those down, which will then bring those incremental costs down at the same time. Again, we are leading on that by creating demand, letting folks know this is a good investment for them to make, which will drive down the overall cost.
And we're making that decision at the expense of other programs and priorities that the CEF would normally fund.
There is no question that the CEF funds a variety of efforts around greenhouse gas emissions and other matters, conservation, as you well know, Senator. This is a priority as well. It fits as a tool, an additional tool, which is really directly in keeping with the intent of what the CEF is set to do.
So, as I mentioned before, solar developers are way behind on their goals. CEF could have helped solar developers get projects up and going. This is going to take we don't know the number because we don't have a fiscal note, but it's going to take a very substantial part of the CEF funds. Did the solar industry come in and did they weigh in on this bill at all?
I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat that?
Did the solar industry weigh in on this bill at all?
I do not recall the solar industry coming in to weigh in on this particular piece of legislation.
Sierra Club came in, weighed in on it, and they were looking for a cap. Did we provide that? We didn't provide a cap, right? There's nothing saying we're only going to spend this amount of money on incremental cost differences. Right?
I was not made aware. This is the first that I'm hearing, Senator, about a cap.
My apologies. Again, this bill and the governor's bill are very similar.
Okay.
And they came in on that bill and said the same thing when some of those changes were made. I guess because at that time they knew what that bill was actually doing, and that bill had the financing structure that is now in the bill that we're discussing now, right?
Senator, we are still, there is the governor's bill remains, or rather will be in the jurisdiction of the Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee. And there are additional provisions in that bill which we are still to hear. This ties to the funding portion of it, but we will hear that and we will take that under consideration. This portion of it, though, again, the intent here was to provide a commitment to clean trucks, but to do so with the guardrails around infrastructure and guardrails around protecting Marylanders from those incremental costs. That's what we worked in partnership with all the stakeholders to come up with something that was, I think, a much stronger consensus product, and that's what this is.
So going back, now in this bill, there's a study, right, that has to take place. And in that study, it's going to look to see if this is really feasible or not. It's also going to look at electric charging stations and the grid throughout the state.
Yep.
At the end of that study, the state is mandated to move forward with this. It has a decision. What would be the status of that?
At the end of the study, the way that the amendment reads, the department may delay implementation of the regulations authorized under this section by 1 or more model years. So we provide the flexibility actually to the department based on what they've learned, what we've learned, what we all learned from the study, whether or not they can delay implementation of the for model years for the rule.
So did we consider that they shall delay that? I mean, the concern is because, as you just mentioned, everything was if they find that this is not feasible, if they find that the infrastructure is not in place to support these types of vehicles, all we've said is that you may delay it. Why didn't we say you shall delay it? If it doesn't look like it makes sense, you shall delay it and come back to the General Assembly.
We provided flexibility to the department. We are going to have the information, which is what we wanted. We thought that made a lot of sense to do, but we wanted to provide flexibility to the department to make a decision on whether or not to implement or whether or not to delay the implementation based on that information. We felt that that was the more prudent approach, given that there will be other forces that are in play that may or may not be go above and beyond what's in the report. We asked for very specific things in the report. There may be other market conditions that may dictate that it makes sense to do that. If, for example, as we are hopeful will happen, there is a surge in the availability, there's a reduction in the pricing of the EV vehicles, it simply makes sense that we would provide them with the flexibility to be able to implement or not.
All right, and then finally, is there any type of reporting that comes back to the General Assembly and lets us know how much this is costing, how much is coming from out of CEF, what type of renewable energy projects have not been able to be funded as a result of this, low and moderate income, the quality, the efficiency housing projects, that comes out of CEF as well too. This is going to drain CEF, again, by a lot. And so many other projects will have to take a back seat to that. Aren't we, as members of the General Assembly, aren't we going to look at a report or of any type and say, hey, you know what, we do think this is a good idea or we don't? I mean, we're going off a lot right now that are unknown. And Mr. President, I don't like having to do a bill without an updated fiscal note. I mean, especially something like this on how much money is going to come out of CEF, and especially what we've heard on other testimony. But this could, in a sense, drain CEF if we continue to do this in a method that makes some kind of a difference, which is what I believe that you're looking for.
Senator, under current law, CEF provides an annual report to us that talks about what they've done, how they've done it. It's an extensive report. That will have that information in it. We will have access to the information. It's readily available. There are policy decisions that happen in and out of CEF, as you are well aware, often. And so those are decisions that we make here, and those are reported by CEF on an annual basis under current law.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for answering. Mr. President, obviously I still have very much concerns over this. The fact that we are immediately joining into California's admission requirements is concerning based on what California just did with the passenger vehicles. This is an unknown. You know, we are talking about something that's going to happen in 2027 that we are requiring the department to move forward with, without really knowing the cost of it, without being able to set up, you know, how much money is coming out of. I mean, we've got a lot of money in CEF right now because, again, solar development is behind. If that finally catches up and we are starting to see less money into CEF, there's going to be, as you know before, we've talked about this huge competition for CEF dollars. And I don't think that this bill, the way that it's amended, gives the General Assembly enough flexibility to determine that information and make a better decision with regard to that. So I had some amendments that I drafted, but they're not here. So they are here. But I talked enough.
We have to dispose of these ones first.
Yeah, I don't need to. I don't need to provide them. I'm fine with I think the responses. I think you've heard my concern about it. Because the amendments just got here, I doubt they'll be looked at as friendly. But they were concerning more about we may join California, not we shall join California, which I don't think you're going to like. Nope.
The senator from Prince George.
Yeah, the senator from, and at the same time, requiring the department to back out of this if it comes in with a negative. Those are my amendments. They're not going to be accepted. But I do want to just continue to express concerns. I would be interested to see what the governor's bill looks like coming out of committee and if it addresses some of these issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And just want to praise both senators. You know, this is the beauty of the Senate is thoughtful, deliberative debate. Raising questions to the chair, impersonal questions, really trying to get to the facts of the matter. So appreciate the conversation. And it was on the amendments, not on the bill itself. So proper subject matters. I just want to give credit for where it is due. Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield for a question?
Senator may proceed.
Thanks. My question is more about the technical construction of the vehicle of zero emission. Does that mean, and I guess it does, I've been trying to dig through here and find it, 100% battery powered? What is zero emission?
Not necessarily. It talks about the emissions, not the design. So it has to be a zero emission vehicle. It doesn't necessarily talk about the design.
So my concern with the bill is, and I want to see if this is in there or if we can amend it in there. You know, a four-person passenger car is one thing, driving around, battery operation. You know, that they need to, they can pull in a local gas station. You know, Wawa Royal Farm and charge for a little while. When you're dealing with an 80,000-pound truck that's out in Western Maryland climbing the mountains, they're going to burn those batteries in seconds. And what they've done on some of these trucks, and I'll take a step back, you know, I'm pretty sure many people have driven by truck stops. They've seen the trucks sitting there idling at night. You know, it used to be that 8-cylinder diesel motor sat there and idled all night long. EPA got them on them. So manufacturers actually put in small generators. So at night, the trucks shut down, but they turn on a much smaller generator that'll run a TV, charge a cell phone. With these trucks, what they're looking to do is install these in there as emergency backup, not to propel the vehicle. Right. But when let's say you're driving out in Western Maryland or a long stretch out in Midwest and your battery's going down, you know, once it's done, it's done. What they can do is pull off on the side of the road, turn that little generator on and sit there for a couple hours while it slowly regenerates the battery enough that they can limp to the next gas station or charging station. I want to see if that's in there, if that's available in these trucks as we move forward.
There is nothing in the bill that would preclude that from being the case, Senator. And remember as well that that there is only a percentage. There will be applications for certain that the diesel truck will still likely make sense or could potentially make sense, let me say it that way, and there's room for that, but there is nothing in the bill to preclude what you just mentioned.
I mean, I can see the local delivery truck that runs around Annapolis and Anne Arundel County that, hey, you know, he's low, he can pull in, but I'm looking at more of the over-road trucks. You know, the fire engine that the minority leader mentioned actually had a small generator on there for that, because if they're on a fire scene and they can't leave because it's an extended issue, they can fire it on and at least charge their battery. So I just want to make sure that is in that bill, that it prevents Peterbilt, Kenworth, all these other manufacturers from installing small auxiliary
there is nothing in this bill that
systems.
precludes what you just mentioned, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendments, any further discussion? If not, questions on the amendments. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 224 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We have another counter on the bill, Senator.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a quick announcement. I have some guests in the gallery.
Oh, Senator, may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, if you can join me in recognizing the students of Parkdale High School in my district, the Student Government Association who was here today. They're up in the gallery today. Please give them a warm round of applause, please. Thank you and welcome.
Welcome to the student government. Getting to see the debate about climate change. You know, this is probably of interest to the young folks there. Excellent. All right, we've got a report out of the Committee on Finance. This is report number 5. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 26, Senator Augustine, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Maryland Children's Health Program and Social Services Program, eligibility and enrollment, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you're looking to cut red tape and streamline an administrative process, Senate Bill 26 is for you. As amended, this bill requires the Maryland Department of Health, subject to limitations of the state budget and as permitted by the federal law, to establish an express lane for eligibility programs with a focus on redetermination of continued eligibility for individuals already enrolled in the Medicaid and CHIP programs based on eligibility findings by the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. The department is authorized to seek any necessary waivers from the federal government, and the programs required to be implemented by January 1st of 2025. The delayed date should allow enough time to develop appropriate data sharing in order to streamline and make more efficient the redetermination and CHIP eligibility. Amendment number 1 adds a sponsor and alters the title and is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes language using SNAP data regarding SSI eligibility and enrollment in the Electric Universal Service Program, and it extends the termination date of the work group on low-income utility assistance in order for the work group to complete its work. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the unanimous favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections to the 2 committee amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 26 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 170, Senator Feldman, Energy Generation Projects Required Labor Standards, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Senate Bill 170 is a very straightforward bill. It would simply require that the developer of an energy project, a generating station that is greater than, that is 2 megawatts or greater, pay either the prevailing wage or have a project labor agreement. Typically, this is going to be a solar project. This does not apply to offshore wind. Colleagues, this exact same bill passed overwhelmingly last year off this floor. It got over late to our colleagues in the House chamber where it did not receive a vote. The amendment on this bill provides that it is prospective. With that, Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Chair recognizes the senator from District 6 on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I have the sponsor yield?
Will the floor leader yield? Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
The bill defines covered projects, but the question is there other solars that are, other than solar that are covered under the generation projects or the other, other solar projects that are covered in this project, in the queer?
Okay, I'm not quite sure I followed the question. Are there other solar projects that are less than 2 megawatts?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Did the solar industry support this bill?
That's a good question. I don't recall that the our friends in solar did or did not weigh in on it.
Can you tell me who did not support this bill? Was there other businesses or others that are out there that did not support the bill?
It is possible that there are some who do not support prevailing wage that may well have.
Okay. Mr. President, if I could, I might have an amendment or two, so I'd like to lay over the bill on the rule.
Senator, the layover would be out of order at this time because we just adopted the amendments. Senator could special order the bill for a day. We have plenty of time.
Yes,
any objections to special order?
No objection at all, Mr. President.
All right, any objections? Without objection, we'll special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow. All right. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 232, Senator Bidel, Health Occupations, Licensed Athletic Trainers, Dry Needling Approval, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 232 would allow a licensed athletic trainer to perform dry needling as a specialized task. This is already done by the acupuncturist, the physical therapist, and the chiropractors, so we would just add athletic trainers to this list of scope of practice available to them. The board must issue an approval to perform dry needling to a licensed athletic trainer who completes at least 80 hours of instructions and at least 40 hours of hand-on instructions. Just a reminder, the bill passed this body last year with 45 votes. Amendment 1 adds a sponsor. Amendment 2 strikes an erroneous cross-reference and clarifies requirement related to the hands-on instruction portion of the education requirement. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections on the amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 232 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 258, Senator Lamb, Hospital Credentialing Reappointment Process for Physician Staff Modification, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 258 changes the minimum standard for a physician credentialing process that a hospital must have in place as a condition for state licensure. Instead of every 2 years, the formal written reappointment process for physicians that must be used in accordance with standards of the accrediting body that accredits a hospital now is going to be changed to every 3 years. This is not unusual for a state to adopt various health facility accreditation standards as a condition of licensure. Many other states have moved to give flexibility based on the accrediting body standards. There are no amendments. There's no fiscal impact. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the report? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 258 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 396, Cecil County Senators, Economic Development, Upper Shore Regional Council membership, favorable.
Chair recognizes the minority leader as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 396 alters the voting membership of the Upper Shore Regional Council by removing the 3 Cecil County Commissioner positions and replacing them with the County Executive of Cecil County and 2 members of the Cecil County Council. There are no amendments. There was no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 396 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Senators, we may have, I don't know if she is still coming, but we did have Felicia Porter. If she does, I may stop just to introduce her quickly. She's a wonderful councilwoman. I think she's coming down potentially. Wonderful council person in the 46th district and also parts of the 40th. And so we'll introduce her if she comes in. But let's go to the next report, which is out of Education, Energy, and the Environment, Report 7. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 256, Senator Hester, Environment, Firefighting Training, Oriented Strand Board, Prohibition, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, cancer is the #1 killer for our brave firefighters. And what this bill does is it prohibits a person from setting oriented strand board and the harmful chemicals therein for burning during a firefighting training. A person who violates the bill's prohibition is subject to a civil penalty of up to $500 for the first violation and a civil penalty of up to $1,000 for the second or subsequent violation. There is 1 committee amendment that adds co-sponsors. I'd like to move the favorable committee report as amended.
All right, the floor leader moves the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections on the amendment? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none. Oh, yes.
Mr. President,
yes.
can we special order this to the appropriate time tomorrow for the purpose of a floor amendment?
We don't have anything before us at the moment. We have to have the report up. But we could, if there is no objections, we could reconsider the vote by which the Favorable report was adopted. Are there any objections to the Senator's motion to reconsider? Without objection, the motion carries. So the report is now back in front of us. Let's make sure that we just get it right on the computer.
Is that where we were?
All right. We've adopted the amendment, so just on the report, on the amended report. Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. The Senator wishes to move to special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow?
Yes, please.
Any objections to the Senator's motion? Without objection, the bill and the report will be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow. Before we move to the next one, very briefly, just want to introduce our wonderful 10th District Councilwoman, Felicia Porter. Thank her for being here, and she's been doing incredible work, and we appreciate her visiting Annapolis today. So welcome. 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 All right, Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 275, Senator Bailey, hunting, snares, traps, and other similar devices, identification requirement, favorable.
Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the Lower Eastern Shore as the floor leader.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. Senate Bill 275 requires a person who uses a snare, trap, or other similar device to capture wildlife to ensure that an identification number, which would be issued by the Department of Natural Resources, is stamped on the device or a metal tab affixed to the device. The department may waive the identification number requirement if the device is only used on private property owned or rented by the person placing the device. A person who finds a snare, trap, or another similar device that does not meet the bill's identification requirements may report the device to the department or to the Natural Resources Police Force. This bill would give the Department of Natural Resources the ability to trace a snare or trap back to its owner so the owner can be contacted should it be necessary to inform them of any issue involving that trap. There were no committee amendments. There is no fiscal impact, and I move for a favorable adoption of SB 275.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 275 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 320, Senator Brooks, Natural Resources Wildlife Advisory Commission membership, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. Senate Bill 320 requires the government to appoint to the Wildlife Advisory Commission one member who's in academic research with expertise in wildlife biology, wildlife conservation, wildlife management, or ecology. The bill also adds to the existing requirement that the commission includes representation from the farming community by also requiring the commission include representation from the hunting community, the wildlife preservation community, and the wildlife recreation community. Yeah, there are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 increases the size of the commission from 9 to 10 and provides the staggering of membership terms. The amendment also specifies the term of the new academic research member of the commission and clarifies that the bill does not alter the terms of any current commission member. There's no fiscal impact. Mr. President, move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections to the 2 amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? Any objections? On the report, excuse me. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 320 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 386, Senator Hester, Certified Local Farm and Chesapeake Invasive Species Provider Program Establishment, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsors the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, many of you will agree with me that catfish are delicious and nutritious. They are also an invasive species, and what this bill seeks to do is to increase the market demand for these catfish. Specifically, Senate Bill 386 renames the Certified Local Farm Enterprise Program to be the Certified Local Farm and Fish Program. It also expands the program's purpose to include preferences for the purchase of food made from specified invasive fish species. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical. The second one alters the name of the program, requires an annual report, and changes the bill's effective date. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report and the 2 amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Southern Maryland. Has
Yes,
an amendment?
Mr. President. Thank you. I have a amendment.
Pages will please come and collect the first one for this group of pages. So we're going to collect it quickly and we're going to deliver it quickly. So if senators aren't paying attention, you can just drop it on their desks. They'll, hopefully they're reading it closely, but it's on the computers as well, so they might be reading it on their laptops, but we want to make sure everyone has a chance to see it. Give us just a moment to distribute it so that we can. It's a really complicated amendment, it appears.
Very technical,
Senator,
Mr. President. Yes, just adds a sponsor.
All right. Any objections to the senator's amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 386 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 407, Senator Reedy, Drinking Water Innovative Potable Reuse Pilot Program Establishment, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Harford and Cecil counties as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 407 is an emergency bill establishing the Indirect Potable Reuse Pilot Program within the Maryland Department of the Environment. The purpose of this pilot program is to authorize the regulated use of reclaimed water as a source for drinking water treatment facilities. The bill authorizes the department to review, permit, and regulate a process to use reclaimed water as a source for a drinking water treatment facility through a potable reuse permit. The pilot program terminates June 30th, 2028. There are 3 committee amendments. First Amendment is technical. Second Amendment renames the pilot program and makes a number of technical and clarifying changes. Also increases the length of time for which reclaimed water must be held in an environmental buffer. The third and final amendment authorizes the department to renew a potable reuse permit after termination of the pilot program. I'd like to move the 3 amendments and move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections to the amendments? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 407 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. I think that does it for that calendar. We'll stick with education, energy, and the environment. This is report number 8. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 248, Senator Kramer, Institutions of Higher Education Transcripts Prohibition on Punitive Measures Related to Student Debt, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
And counting. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 248 addresses the larger issues of student debt and combines it with the efforts of this legislature and nationally to get rid of abusive and unfair collection practices. We've had a form of this bill before this committee and this body for a number of years. This bill will make it saying that our state colleges and universities, as well as our private institutions, cannot withhold a student's transcript as a mean for collecting an outstanding debt. So it would officially prohibit an institution from refusing to provide a transcript, from refusing any other articles attached to their record of attendance there. There is one committee amendment, so I ask for the adoption. That's simply adding members to the sponsors to the bill. It passed unanimously, so I ask for the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion, any objections? Without objection, the sponsor amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 248 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 287, Senator Gallion, State Board of Elections, Municipal Elections, Publication of Results on Website, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Hartford and Cecil counties as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. If anyone's ever wanted to look in one spot to find results for municipal election results, this is the bill for you. This bill requires the State Board of Elections to publish municipal election results on its website, kind of a one-stop shop for election results. There are two amendments. The first amendment adds a co-sponsor and makes technical changes to the purpose paragraph. The second amendment strikes the requirement that SBE establish a portal and requires municipalities to submit election results electronically to SBE, requires SBE to publish results of a municipal election by year and municipality name, and requires results be submitted within 30 days after the certification of the municipal election. I'd like to move the two amendments and for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 287 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. I'm sort of surprised they don't do that already, but making improvements every day. All right, clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 339, Senator Kagan, Election Law Recounts Procedures, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last year this body passed an emergency election bill dealing with recounts. It was authorizing either full or partial recounts and indicated when they were even allowable and who would pay. This is kind of a clarifying and update as to which types of recount you could use and how internet delivered ballots papers are managed. There are two amendments. One, the first is the purpose paragraph is technical. The second one just clarifies the definition of the internet delivered ballots and makes sure that all of those that can be counted will be counted. Move the favorable report with the amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for the floor leader.
Of course.
So, Senator may proceed.
This is just clarification, some confusion, things I was hearing during the election about the mail-in ballot, I'm sorry, the online ballots, the fact that it had to do with the paper that, you know, I go online, I vote online, and I think it's the Board of Election prints it out, and then they have to transfer it to a different piece of paper. Does this address that?
This does address this vis-a-vis recounts. Other aspects of it we get to in other legislation that the body may be getting. It's a lot of steps to vote online, and it's very time consuming. So I'm happy to explain it briefly.
Well, no, I don't want to take up the body's time. I just didn't know if we were addressing it in this bill. So this only deals with should there be a recount.
So should there be a recount, we want to make sure that the pieces of paper that folks printed out on their home printer and the ballot that has been manually duplicated are batched together so that when we do a recount, we can guarantee the accuracy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, further discussion on the two amendments? If not, are there any objections to the amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 339 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 343, Senator Zucker, Maryland Achieving a Better Life Experience ABLE Program Account Establishment Procedures, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some years ago, the sponsor, who was then a delegate from the 14th District, and I collaborated on a piece of legislation I think that we both think, I don't want to speak for him, one of the more significant bills we've ever passed here, and it was legislation creating the ABLE account program, which allows Marylanders with developmental disabilities and their families to save in a tax-deferred account, an ABLE account, for those kids' futures. And so all this bill does, generally, there's been some changes at the federal level by the IRS and Congress, and all this bill does is to conform Maryland law with the federal changes. And that said, Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 moves up the effective date to June 1, 2023 from October 1, 2023, so that again our ABLE program can conform with federal law and move forward. So with all that, I'd move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
The chair moves for the adoption of 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Mr. Chair, just quickly, if there are additional changes to 529, is this impacted in any way? Or will we have to account for it?
Basically, I think within the construct of the bill, the 529 board can adopt additional regulations to carry out the bill. So I think that this makes the required changes, and then the board itself, I think, can by regulation do what's necessary to make sure that we're not out of alignment with the federal regulations and any federal law. I don't know if that's responsive to your question. That's my understanding.
Okay, that works.
Okay.
All right, on the amendments, any further discussion on the amendments? Any objections to the amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 343 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 863, Senator Kagan, State Administrative Elections, removal from office, favorable with 1 amendment.
The chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is simply a brackets bill. It removes language that was added to our code in 2005 and makes it clear that every state employee should be accountable, and there is 1 amendment, and that will simply move the effective date from October 1 to June 1. Move the favorable report as amended.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 863 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, we've got another one from Education, Energy, and the Environment. They have been busy. This is report number 9. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 157, Senator Waldstreicher, Municipalities Charter Amendments, notice, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 157 modifies the manner in which a municipality may provide charter amendments notices by authorizing the publishing of a summary of the proposed amendment in a newspaper in the municipality at least once and delivering a copy to every residence in the municipality. The residential delivery requirement may be satisfied by including the fair summary in a printed newsletter in the municipality. Furthermore, the bill requires the municipality to maintain records in accordance with the municipality's record retention policy and to make these records available to the public in accordance with the Maryland Public Information Act. Colleagues, just for your information, as it stands right now, the municipality has to 4 times put it in the newspaper right now. And of course, newspapers are far less used at this point. And so it's really, this is trying to just be more responsive to the current times. There is 1 committee amendment, and that amendment requires notice to be posted at the main municipal building for 40 days instead of 4 weeks for voter-led charter amendments. And that amendment simply aligns all of the posting requirements together. I move adoption of the favorable committee report and amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment, the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 157 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 332, Senator Hayes, Maryland African American Museum Corporation Board of Directors, membership favorable, one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City and County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Maryland African American Museum Corporation was established in 1998 to plan, create, and manage the Reginald Lewis Museum. Currently, it has a board membership of 37. The board and others are requesting that we reduce the number to 23. And instead of the chairman of the Commission on African American History and Cultural serve as a member of the board, the commission must approve one member. So the Commission on African American History and Culture is another entity, and in the early days, that was the entity that was more established, and therefore it made sense to have that be the chair. Now the board, of course, has been established for quite a while and wishes to designate its own chair. There are no committee amendments, so I ask for the adoption. There is one committee amendment that adds 2 members to the board, one to be appointed by the President of the Senate and the other to be appointed by the Speaker of the House. I move for the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 332 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 443, Senator Brooks, real estate brokers, salesperson, associate brokers, continuing education courses, alterations favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Senate Bill 443 establishes separate continuing education requirements for a real estate broker, a real estate salesperson, or associated real estate broker's licensee who has been issued an initial license by the State Real Estate Commission. For a licensee who has been issued a renewal a certificate, current continuing education requirements continue to apply. There are no committee amendments, so Mr. President, please move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 443 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, we've got a little break for this. We got Committee on Judicial Proceedings. This is report number 6. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 15, Senator Carter, Juvenile Law, Child in Need of Supervision, Mandatory Petition, Nicaila Straughter Memorial Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill requires that if a law enforcement officer alleges an act by a child under the age of 13, which results in the death of a victim, the officer must forward a complaint to the Department of Juvenile Services intake officer and requires an intake officer who receives such a complaint to file a petition with the juvenile court. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds the requirement that a law enforcement officer forward a complaint to an intake officer and raises the age in the bill from 10 to under 13. The bill was passed unanimously in the committee. I would move the favorable committee report as amended.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 15 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 106, Senator Sidnor, Court Judgment Exemption from Execution, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Essentially what this bill does is it exempts from execution of a money judgment up to $500 in one's bank account. The cumulative value does not change. It's still $6,000. A writ of garnishment issued for a deposit account or other account described must also instruct the garnishee that, subject to additional exemptions, the garnishee is to garnish only the amount exceeding the amount exempted without election of the debtor. There are two amendments. The first amendment is technical. The second amendment establishes procedures that depository institutions must follow on receipt of a writ of garnishment and clarifies that the depository institution aren't liable for good faith reliance on instructions in a writ of garnishment. Mr. President, I move adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections to the amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 106 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 209, Senator West, Task Force to Study Crime Classification and Penalties, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill establishes a task force to study crime classifications and penalties. Scattered through the Maryland Code, not just in the criminal law section, are lots of crimes, and they've been added willy-nilly over the years without particular regard for what's already in the code. So this bill requires the task force members to establish appropriate categories of crimes and then drop every single crime in the code into one of the categories. This then tees up a future study which will examine the crimes in each of the categories to decide whether the punishments are analogous for analogous crimes. So this is a first step. There was no opposition to this bill. The bill passed the committee unanimously. There are 3 amendments. One is technical. One makes membership changes to the task force. The third alters the reporting responsibilities and sunset of the task force. I hereby move the approval of all the amendments as well as the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 209 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 210, Senator West, Orphans Court Judges Restriction on Practicing Law, favorable 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the second bill on Orphans Court in as many weeks. The Montgomery County, Harford County, and Howard County, in those 3 counties, the circuit court judges sit as the Orphans Court. In all the other counties in the state, Orphans Court judges are elected. In most of the counties, lawyers who get elected to the Orphans Court under the law cannot practice law while they're sitting on the Orphans Court. The Estates and Trusts article contains some of the most abstruse provisions in the entire Maryland Code. And it's important to have lawyers on orphans courts. Right now, because lawyers have to stop practicing law for the 4 years that they're on the orphans court, many lawyers just says, this is not something I want to do. The salary for orphans court judges is very low, typically around $10,000 a year. So what this bill provides is that orphans court judges who are lawyers can practice any part of the law they want while they're on the orphans court except estates and trust law. So they can practice criminal law, civil law, family law, all the other forms of law, just not estates and trust law. The bill was passed unanimously. There's 1 amendment. It prohibits the judge of an orphans court from acting as an attorney in matters relating to estate plans that might come within the jurisdiction of the orphans court after the death of an individual. I hereby move the approval of that amendment as well as the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Thank you, Senator. Floor leader moves for the adoption of 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 210 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 253, Senator Hester, Estates and Trusts, Register of Will, electronic filing and signatures, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Harford County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 253 is very simple, straightforward, and needed. It requires registers of wills to accept documents electronically filed. There were no amendments, no opposition, and it was passed unanimously in our committee, and we would ask for the adoption of the committee's favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 253 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 277, Senator McKay, Real Property Sheriff Sales Notice Procedures Subordinate Interest, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, this bill requires the judgment creditor to provide a notice before the property can be sold. There were 3 amendments. They all do satisfy all objections and concerns. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the requirement that judgment creditors provide notice in certain interest parties 20 days prior to the sheriff's sale of the real property. Amendment number 3 alters the sheriff's use of an assessment record of real property in lieu of the appraisal. The amendments and the bill all passed favorable. Therefore, Mr. President, I move we adopt the favorable report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 277 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Is that the end of that calendar? All right. We've got a special order. This is special order number 13. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 18, Senator West, Police Retention Work Group. Question is on the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, this is the one I think we had an amendment. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that we special order this until the appropriate time on Friday. Are we pro forma or regular on Friday?
Regular will be.
Excellent. Just the senator from Prince George's and then another senator from Prince George's and Calvert have some good ideas that are worth entertaining. I want to make sure we circulate it past the committee members, but I consider them friendly ideas and concept.
Great. All right. Question is, the senator has moved to special order the bill to the appropriate time on Friday. Are there any objections? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time on Friday. Madam Clerk, could we please, or Madam Secretary, could we ring the bells very briefly? I think we have mostly everyone. Let's do a quorum call before third reading calendar.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? It appears so. Clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. This is third reading calendar number 12. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 131, the President mandated reports revisions.
Senate Bill 131 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 131, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 150, Senator Augustine, Maryland Tort Claims Act, denial of claims notice.
Senate Bill 150 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 150, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 173, Senator Waldstreicher, automatic expungement clarification.
Senate Bill 173 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 173, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 191, Senator Jackson, Prince George's County, Office of the Sheriff, Duties and Deputy Sheriffs.
Senate Bill 191 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 191, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 193, Senator Sidnor, ground leases, collection of rent, interest, fees, and other expenses, registration requirements.
Senate Bill 193 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 193, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 194, Senator Sidnor, ground leases, notices, and billing forms and requirements.
Senate Bill 194 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 194, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 195, Senator West, Orphans Court Judges Election.
Senate Bill 195 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 39 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 195, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 196, Senator Sidnor, residential ground leases, redemption and extinguishment requirements.
Senate Bill 196 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 196, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 325, Washington County Senators, Washington County Sheriff's salary alteration.
Senate Bill 325 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 325, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 342, the President, Baltimore County Circuit Court Judgeships.
Senate Bill 342 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 342, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City.
Mr. President, thank you. I would like to not be excused, but be recorded in the green. Thank you.
On 342?
Yes.
Without any objections? Without objections, so ordered. Any other alterations, fixes? If not, okay. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Washington County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 195 like to be recorded in the red.
195 in the red. Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. Any others? All right. Senators, the desk is clear. Desk is clear. So this was our first taste of what the next 3 weeks are probably going to feel like. We're getting into the full swing of things. So let's go ahead and do committee announcements. Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Finance Committee will meet at 1 p.m. in the committee room for bill hearings, followed by a voting session. We have 12 bills, 176 witnesses today. So please be on time, 1 p.m.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Okay, Triple E Committee will meet at 1 p.m. for bill hearings. I would note, since it was referenced earlier, the first bill will be presented by the Lieutenant Governor. It's the Governor's bill on clean energy transportation funding, and that will be the first bill up today. 12 bills immediately following. There'll be a short voting session, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Budget and Tax Committee will meet at 1 o'clock today for a presentation on the budget of the Department of Budget and Management. We have 4 witnesses. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll have hearings in the Capital Budget Committee at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 1 p.m. for bill hearings, followed by a short voting session.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Additional standing committees, rules or exec noms, any select committees, caucuses? Yes, Chair recognizes the Chair of the Montgomery County Delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow Montgomery County delegation members,
Thursday, immediately following session, we're going to have a voting session. We've got quite a collection of local bills that have come over from our House colleagues, and we need to start getting them moving. So immediately following session on Thursday, we'll get to work. So please put that on your calendars. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator, the Chair of the Veterans Caucus.
This is going to be Prince George's County Senate delegation.
Senator may proceed.
Many hats, Mr. President. Prince George's County delegation will meet tomorrow at 5:30 in the bill room. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the Lower Eastern Shore.
I think this is the time, Mr. President and friends, to announce Chicken Day in Annapolis. It's today. It is today, has started over at the Governor's Calvert House until 1 o'clock, and the senators are invited to attend, and this is a nice time to meet our farmers and others involved in the chicken industry, which I'll remind everyone is a $5 billion economic impact for Delmarva. So we hope to see you over there.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. I'm going to try and swing by. It's going to be close today. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Carroll County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had someone to commemorate and adjourn in honor of, if I might proceed.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment today to honor Barbara Stigler, who passed away last week at the age of 82. Barbara and her husband, Doug, led the Maryland Association for Families from 1994 through 2009 here in Annapolis. In those years, Barb gave spiritual support and prayer leadership to many legislators and staff and small groups, as well as offering hospitality to many individually at their Inn of the Good Shepherd, which was a retreat center near Marriottsville in Carroll County that they operated for 29 years. Offering silent retreats, Bible studies, and other learning opportunities, the Inn of the Good Shepherd was a place of refuge for leaders and for people of all walks of life who needed time away from things and quiet time with God. In every General Assembly session from 1994 through 2008, Barb was a friend, Bible study leader, and confidant to many legislators. For 7 years, from 2002 to 2009, Barb and Doug led a summer civic series for high schoolers called City on a Hill, which gave youth in Maryland opportunities to learn about running for political office, how legislation is written, voting procedures in the General Assembly, and more. Barb also served in her past for 2 years as a missionary with her husband in Haiti, and they worked to help inspire others to serve needy and impoverished in that war-torn country. In all her work, Barb always liked to say, "It's not about me, it's all about Him, her Savior." I would ask, Mr. President, that we could adjourn the session in Barbara Stigler's honor today, and thank you.
Without objection, certainly, Senator. Thank you for that reflection and thought and passing of a good woman. So, Madam Majority, do we have the name? Okay, wonderful. Excellent. Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a good friend, and he served in the Senate and in the House, I believe, for 50 years, and he's in the hospital. And Senator Norman Stone, and I talked to his wife, and he just had a problem with falling a lot. So I talked to him just briefly at the hospital, and he's in good spirits. But I'd like for everybody just to think about our good friend, my still good friend. I call him constantly. I talk to Joan all the time to see how he's doing. But just think and have a moment of just prayer about our good friend, Senator Norman Stone. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for that. And I know that's been a tough road. Thank you for that. We'll keep him in our prayers. Any other announcements for the good of the order? If not, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn today.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 1st at 10 a.m. in honor of Barbara Stigler.
Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful day, everyone.